There comes a moment not marked by noise nor rage, but by silence, the kind of silence that settles when the storm has passed and all that remains is truth. You see, it's not always the loudest who are right. It's not always the ones who fight back who win. Sometimes it's the one who watches, waits, endures, the one they thought was broken, the one they thought would never rise again. But here you are, still standing, and they will pay the price, not because you seek it, but because life has a way of balancing its scales, with or without your permission. Hold justice, not vengeance. There is a difference between justice and vengeance, a line that many cannot see and even fewer can walk. One is driven by fury, raw and wild. The other, it moves like water, silent, patient, and unstoppable. What they did to you was not right. It was deliberate, calculated perhaps, or careless in a way that felt personal. They may have smiled when they did it, or worse, they may have walked away as if you were nothing at all. But you remember every detail, every glance, every word, every quiet betrayal. And while they moved on, unaware or unbothered, you were left to carry the weight. But here's what they never understood. You didn't need to scream. You didn't need to fight back. Not in the way they expected. You didn't burn the world down to prove a point. Instead, you rebuilt your own. Justice doesn't arrive with a shout. It comes in whispers. It comes in the form of consequences they never thought would come. It arrives when they least expect it, often dressed as coincidence, fate, or irony. But it is none of those things. It is simply what is owed. And no, it's not about revenge. You've long moved past the need to see them hurt. You don't crave their downfall. You don't need it to breathe. What you need is balance, and life in its own quiet rhythm delivers exactly that. They will pay, not because you demanded it, but because truth always finds its way back. What they gave out, they will receive, not through your hands, but through the hands of time, of consequence, of justice that does not forget. You kept your hands clean, and that will haunt them far more than any fire you could have thrown. Unshakable poise. There is something deeply unsettling about the person who does not flinch. Not because they lack emotion, no, that would be easy to ignore, but because they feel everything. And yet, they choose stillness. They choose silence. They choose grace when chaos would be far easier. You were tested, not once, not twice, but over and over, in ways most couldn't endure without breaking. And while the world expected you to lash out, to fold under pressure, to collapse under the weight of what they did, you didn't. You stood still. That's not weakness. That's not fear. That's control. And few understand the power in restraint until it's too late. When people hurt others, they often expect a reaction, anger, outbursts, desperation. It makes their wrongdoing easier to justify. They point to the rage and say, "See, that's who they really are." But when you don't give them that, when you meet cruelty with composure, when your eyes say, "I see everything," but your voice remains calm, that terrifies them more than any scream ever could. Because now they don't know what comes next. You didn't chase them. You didn't beg for understanding or plead for fairness. You didn't scream into the void hoping someone would acknowledge your pain. No. You took it. You carried it. You felt every ounce of it without letting it shatter you. And in doing so, you became something they could never predict. Unshakable. And in time, they'll realize the price of underestimating you. The one who doesn't react immediately is the one you should fear the most. Not because they are violent, not because they are plotting revenge, but because they are calculating something far more powerful: peace. A peace that is earned, not borrowed. A peace that comes only after you've been through the fire and chose not to become it. You didn't need to destroy anyone to reclaim your power. You simply chose not to let them destroy you. Let that settle in. You see, poise is not passive, it is active restraint. It's standing still while the world tries to shake you. It's smiling when your heart is heavy. It's walking forward when everything in you wants to stop. And most of all, it's choosing not to let their chaos become your character. They might think your silence was weakness. Let them. Let them misunderstand it. Because what they call silence is actually your power recharging, your dignity holding the line, your spirit refusing to be drawn into the mud they tried to pull you into. One day they'll look back and realize the person they wronged, the one they dismissed, the one they thought would crumble quietly, is the very person whose calm they couldn't break, whose strength they couldn't match, whose soul they couldn't stain. And when their consequences arrive, as they always do, they'll remember your eyes, not cold, not angry, but clear, as if you already knew how this would end. Because you did. You understood something they didn't. Storms don't last, and when they pass, only what is rooted remains. You remained. They will pay the price, not because you said a word, but because you didn't need to. You rose while they fell into the very trap they set for you. And your poise? It will echo louder than any revenge could have. Hold that poise, that stillness, that quiet certainty, because it is the strongest armor you will ever wear. Psychological depth. There are wounds that don't bleed. No visible scar, no broken bone, and yet they ache deeper than any physical pain ever could. Because what they did wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just neglect. It was a dismantling of your trust, your peace, your sense of self. And the hardest part? It wasn't even the act itself. It was the way they carried on after it, as if you were nothing, as if what happened didn't matter. But it did, it mattered to you, and you carried it, quietly, for days, weeks, maybe years. Some wounds don't scream, they whisper. In the silence of your room, in the pauses between conversations, in the way you hesitate before trusting someone new, in the way you overthink, overanalyze, over-apologize. They linger, not because you're weak, but because you're human. The pain wasn't loud, but it was constant. And in that quiet suffering, a strange strength was born. Not all at once, not in a moment of triumph, but slowly, in the decision to wake up the next day, in the decision to keep going when it felt pointless, in the decision to not let what they did define who you are. They took something from you. Maybe your innocence, your trust, your belief in good intentions. Maybe they made you question your worth, your memory, even your sanity. And the world around you? It didn't always notice, because you smiled, you functioned. You said, "I'm fine." You weren't. And that's what they'll never understand. They will never understand the cost of your composure. They will never know the battle you fought behind your eyes, while they laughed, while they walked away, while they called you too sensitive or dramatic. They will never understand the courage it took not to break. And that is your power, to feel every ounce of pain and still choose not to pass it on to others. To be wounded and still protect the hearts around you. To be betrayed and still offer loyalty where it is deserved. That is strength. That is character. And it is rare. People assume that the strongest are the ones who fight back, the ones who scream, who retaliate, who get even. But the truth is, some of the strongest people are the ones who say nothing, the ones who process everything, not outwardly but internally. Every emotion examined, every memory faced, every fracture mended from within. And yes, there were moments when it almost broke you, moments when you didn't recognize yourself, when you felt hollow, when you questioned whether healing was even possible. But you stayed with yourself. You didn't abandon your heart, even when they did. There's a depth to you now that wasn't there before, a quiet understanding of pain, of people, of patterns. You notice the subtle shifts in tone. You read silence like a language. You've become someone who sees more than they say, who feels more than they show, because you've been there and you made it through. That depth, that wisdom, it came at a cost, but it is yours now, and it makes you powerful. They may never know what they took. They may never grasp the full impact of their actions. But the universe has a way of giving people mirrors, not when they want them, but when they need them. One day they'll look into a situation, into a relationship, into a moment, and feel it. The absence, the regret, the realization, and it will be theirs to carry. Because while you carried the weight of what they did to you, you also carried your own healing. You didn't let it end you. You didn't become what hurt you. You transformed it, quietly, privately, and that is something they will never be able to touch. The beauty of deep pain is that, when navigated with integrity, it gives birth to deep understanding. You've become someone who can walk beside another in their suffering without flinching. Someone who doesn't judge the cracks in others, because you know what it takes to mend your own. They thought they broke you, but in truth they refined you. You carry a stillness now, not because you're numb, but because you're aware. You've seen what people are capable of. You've felt the coldness behind smiles, the weight behind silence. But you didn't let it make you bitter. You chose depth over destruction. And now, when they look at you, if they ever do, they will see someone they can't reach, not because you built a wall, but because you built a foundation, and they don't have the tools to shake it anymore. They will pay the price, not by your hand, but by their own emptiness, by the realization that they had access to something real and treated it like it was disposable, that they stood in the presence of someone who would have walked through fire for them, and instead they lit the match. And you walked through the flames, not to prove anything, but to rise. You don't need them to say sorry. You don't need them to understand. The only thing you need is the peace you've earned. And you have that now. They will pay the price, and you will not even need to watch, because your story moved on, and theirs remained stuck in the moment they chose to lose you. Forewarning cloaked in elegance. There's a moment, just a flicker in time, when the ones who caused the harm begin to feel it echo back. Not through your hands, not through any outward punishment, but through the shift in energy, in circumstance, in silence. They won't hear it coming. That's the beauty of truth. It doesn't always strike like lightning. Sometimes it walks in like the breeze, unnoticed at first, gentle even, until the room is colder and they can no longer ignore what's missing. The warmth, the presence, the access. You. It is easy to take for granted what seems consistent. A kind heart, an open hand, a forgiving spirit. For a while they believed your goodness was theirs to use, to lean on, to test. They thought, perhaps, that you would always be there, no matter how many times they disappeared. They mistook your patience for passivity, your empathy for weakness. But life has a way of rebalancing such illusions. No, you didn't raise your voice. You didn't curse their name or set the world on fire to prove they were wrong. Instead, you became still. You learned. You withdrew, not in defeat, but in wisdom. You let the tide go out so you could see clearly who was willing to swim toward you and who only stood by you when the waters were calm. And that stillness, it spoke, louder than any accusation ever could. See, there is a difference between warning someone and watching them learn. You didn't need to issue threats. You didn't need to plot or retaliate. You simply let life unfold. Because you knew something they did not. No truth stays hidden forever. No wrongdoing escapes the quiet reach of consequence. You carried yourself with grace, and that grace became the very thing they'll remember when their own world begins to wobble. It will come back to them, not all at once, but in fragments, in moments of confusion, isolation, or regret. Something will go wrong, something will unravel, and for a moment they will pause and think of you, not because you wished it upon them, but because truth has a way of catching up. This is not revenge, this is reality. This is the world returning what was sent out. And the most poetic part? You don't even have to be there when it happens. You don't have to witness the price they pay, because your path has taken you somewhere higher, beyond bitterness, beyond resentment, beyond the need to be proved right. That elevation, that peace, that's the part they never expected. They thought you would fight, that you would stoop, that you would engage in the mess they created, but you chose something far more powerful. You chose to remove yourself entirely, to stop feeding the story, to let silence write the final chapter. And now they are left with a mirror, one they cannot turn away from, not because you held it up to them, but because life did. And in that reflection, they will see what they lost. Not just a person, but a presence, a shelter, a soul that saw them fully and stayed until they gave you no choice but to leave. The reckoning doesn't always look like punishment. Sometimes it looks like absence. The absence of your voice, your care, your belief in them. Sometimes the greatest consequence is simply losing access to what they never truly valued, until it was gone. And you won't need to explain, you won't need to recount every wound, your growth, your peace, your quiet strength. Those will be your only response, and they will echo louder than any confrontation ever could. They may speak of you in fragments, in half-truths, in stories that leave out the parts that matter. Let them. The truth doesn't live in their version. It lives in your recovery, in your dignity, in the way you chose elevation over eruption. Let them think they got away with it. That is part of their lesson, because the price they pay isn't always obvious. It isn't always loud. It isn't always seen by others, but they feel it, in the quiet, in the relationships that don't quite fill the void, in the eyes of people who no longer see them the way you once did, in the opportunities that slip away without reason, in the weight of knowing they had someone rare and failed to recognize it in time. That's not revenge, that's fate. And fate doesn't shout. It doesn't run after people, pleading to be understood. It simply waits. And when the moment is right, it steps in, not with fire, but with truth. And in the face of truth, all defenses fall. So no, you won't raise your voice, you won't strike back, you won't stoop to their level. You'll simply keep walking, with your head high and your heart intact. Because that's what haunts them most. That despite everything, you're still standing, still rising, still becoming everything they tried to convince you you'd never be. And one day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day they'll understand. And when that understanding comes, there will be no dramatic ending, no grand confrontation, just a quiet moment where they feel the weight of it all. That is the price. And you'll be long gone. Not in anger, in peace, dignity over destruction. In the aftermath of betrayal, you're given a choice. You can burn everything down, feed the fire with your anger, your hurt, your need to be seen and vindicated. Or you can walk away with your dignity intact and let that be the final word. You chose the latter, and though it wasn't the easy choice, it was the right one. Because anyone can destroy, anyone can scream, but to hold yourself together, especially when someone tried to tear you apart, that takes something rare. Discipline, grace, power. There were moments you could have said things that would cut deep. Moments you could have exposed truths, shattered illusions, and made them feel what they made you feel. And no one would have blamed you. Some may have even cheered you on. But you didn't do it. Not because they didn't deserve it, but because you deserve peace. You knew the fire would consume you too, so you let go. You chose to rebuild rather than retaliate. You chose silence over spectacle. And now, you carry something they never will. The strength of self-restraint. The pride of knowing you never compromised your character, even when they gave you every reason to. That is power. That is dignity. And make no mistake, it lingers in their mind far longer than rage ever would. They'll remember how you didn't break, how you didn't lower yourself to their level, how you stood still while they flailed for control, and in time, they'll realize that the calmest person in the storm is the one most in command. You could have answered cruelty with cruelty, but you didn't. You answered it with distance, and in that distance, you found yourself again. That is what they lost. Not someone loud, angry, or vengeful, but someone rare. Someone who had every right to respond with destruction and chose dignity instead. Let that be your legacy, because in the end, the world doesn't remember who shouted the loudest. It remembers who stood tallest when everything tried to pull them down. They will pay the price, not through your hands, but through the weight of what they lost when they lost you. And you'll carry nothing but your peace. That is your victory.